Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We got a 2-round 2023 NFL mock draft post Senior Bowl. Honestly, there were a lot of prospects that impressed during the Senior Bowl. Worked them into that late first, early second round. We're going to go through we'll go 1 through 5, 5 through 10, get through some prospects, get through some position fits. Before we do, though, I just want to say thank you to you guys. The NFL draft season is a blast because we get to talk with everybody about different prospects. That's the beauty of NFL draft season, and the support you guys have shown truly means a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, let me take some heat with my picks. This is obviously my picks, 2 rounds. Let me know how you guys feel in the comment section. Of course, still, let's get into this 1 through 5. The Panthers are trading all the way up from 9 to go get their quarterback from the future. I feel like they've just been left holding the bag for far too long. And I think this is the year when you see a guy like Bryce Young available. The Chicago Bears are obviously listening to trade offers. You go up and make it happen. CJ Stroud 2, Will Anderson 3 to the Cardinals, Will Levis 4 to the Colts, and then Jalen Carter off the board to the Seattle Seahawks at 5. How are we thinking with these first 5?
I mean, this would be a nightmare scenario for the Colts. I don't think if they can get one of those top 2 guys, they're in a horrible spot just because of how bad they need a quarterback. And I think the Panthers need it. And it does feel like David Tepper's getting a little antsy and wants to start making some things happen. Because, I mean, he's seen such bad quarterback play. They tried Darnold. They tried Bridgewater. They tried, obviously, Baker this year, and that was a failure. So I could see him making an aggressive move. But at the end of the day, if the Colts are stuck with the 4th pick and Stroud or Levis not on or Stroud and Young gone, I think they're in a horrible spot because there's just no quarterback who's even close to a top 5.
See, I disagree a little with the Will Levis take, but I want to talk about the Colts or the Panthers and why I think they should trade up. As you look at that division with Tom Brady retiring for the Bucs, like the Saints, a lot of question marks. The Falcons, a lot of question marks. This is the year. And the Panthers have a solid roster. Like, I think they did a phenomenal job addressing the offensive line with Big Icky last year. They have some good wide receivers. If you get good quarterback play, I think the NFC South is the Panthers for the taking. And this is why I think you stop waiting. You kind of been eating your vegetables, getting some guys and not holding off on getting a quarterback. You make this happen. And, I mean, you're looking at the Panthers potentially being the favorite to win the NFC South in 2023. As far as Will Levis, again, I'm not as down on Will Levis as you. I get the film wasn't pretty from 2022, but if you guys have been listening to us, you know the extenuating circumstances. He was playing banged up behind a horrible offensive line with really, really young and inexperienced wide receivers. I still think he has some traits where if you're the Colts and you got some building to do, you can take him and get him into your system and develop him because the tools and traits are there. Again, Will Levis is going to be a really interesting guy to monitor. You've seen him mocked as far high up as 1 and as low as outside the top 10. The next 5, Myles Murphy going to the Detroit Lions. I'm still a Myles Murphy believer. A lot of people like to talk about Tyree Wilson. I do like Tyree Wilson. Myles Murphy, I think, has the higher ceiling. And honestly, just as high he has a higher floor than Tyree Wilson. And Myles Murphy is going to be a very good player in the NFL. But I think the ceiling is just as high as Tyree Wilson. People forget how freaky Myles Murphy is. Paris Johnson, my offensive tackle, one of the Raiders with no quarterback. They could be a team that's kind of looking for a veteran quarterback. Tyree Wilson to the Falcons, Brian Brazee to the Bears, who traded all the way down to 9, and then Brian Branch going off the board 10 to the Eagles.
Everyone, if you've been watching us at all, you know Myles Murphy's a guy I think is very much in the conversation for a top 5 pick. I mean, a guy, he's just been dominating for 3 years, or not necessarily as a freshman dominating, but playing really good football for a while. And Tyree Wilson, again, like as much as you see the potential, he hasn't been as dominant for as long and as consistent, I don't think, yet as Myles Murphy. And again, when you look at Myles Murphy, he's a guy who's loaded with potential too. I mean, big, athletic, a little bit more of a smooth athlete in my mind than a Tyree Wilson. So I think that's the right order. I think I would always take Murphy over Wilson, and then the others, I think those are good picks. Like Paris Johnson makes sense. I think Paris Johnson's not clearly better than the other 2, Skronsky and Broderick Jones. It's really close, but I wouldn't argue with any of the 3. And Brian Brazee, I think, is a guy. I think he might go higher than 9. I think he's when you go back and look at him as a freshman, he was so good. He was as good as I've ever seen a true freshman play.
That's like you're seeing Brian Brzee fall out of first rounds, and I think that is truly insane. He had so much go against him in year 3 of his career at Clemson. Like obviously the passing of his sister, he had a kidney problem. He was coming off a torn ACL. You go back and turn on the film of him playing Georgia in his second year at Clemson as a true sophomore, going up against NFL caliber offensive linemen for the Bulldogs. And he was one of the best players on the field. Like I think people are so quickly to forget how good he was before all the injuries and before like the 12-month span where he just, I mean, like his life, he took a lot of blows just in his life in general. I still think he has that potential. You just want to make sure he gets back to that. And then Brian Branch, again, the Eagles really have their pick of the litter there. They just go out and get a really good football player who can play kind of that nickel role, but also like a single high safety. He can do so much for a team. I think Brian Branch, for an Eagles team that is going to lose a lot of guys through free agency on the defense side of the ball, go out and get a really good football player. 11 through 15, we got Broderick Jones, Quentin Johnson, Peter Skoronski, Devin Witherspoon, Nolan Smith going off the board. What's standing out there?
So I think Broderick Jones is an obvious pick. I feel like the Titans are 100% going to take him or Paris Johnson, whoever's on the board. I probably would lean Paris Johnson for them if they had a shot at him, just because he's a better run blocker in my eyes. But the pick I want to talk about is Nolan Smith, and this is a guy who I was way down on. I feel like at the start of this, like draft process, if you will. But the more you kind of watch, the more I'm kind of coming around. Like he's really good. I mean, he's like a better pass rusher, I think, than a lot of people in this draft. I don't think he's like the top end freak athlete, but in terms of pure like pass rush development, he's kind of there. I think he can come in and make an early impact for a team. So for me, I was kind of okay. Felix Anduke, I still love him, and I'd probably take him over Nolan Smith. But man, Nolan Smith's right there with him. Isaiah McGuire for me. He's really pushed himself up. Just watching like what he did against Oregon in some of those early games before he got hurt, he was like really solid.
And he's like what you said, solid. That is the correct term. For one, 25% pass rush win rate before he got hurt. I get he's small. I believe he's only 235 pounds, but he's really good against the run. Like one of the better edge defenders in this class against the run as well. You can do a lot of different things. I mean, people forget he was ranked higher out of high school than Kayvon Thibodeau. He's got a lot of traits, and he's also a phenomenal locker room guy. For the Packers, who you don't really know what the future looks, go out and take a really, really good football player at a premium position at that edge role. I think that makes a lot of sense. One other thing, Quentin Johnson, Bryce Young, feed me that all day. Every single one of my mock drafts is going to have a quarterback for the Houston Texans. It's CJ Stroud at this point, and then Quentin Johnson coming at 12. I think that makes a ton of sense. That wide receiver room needs a ton of help. And you go out and get, in my eyes, easily the best wide receiver in this draft. 16 through 20. Christian Gonzalez going to the Commanders. Anton Harrison going to the Steelers. Eli Ricks, though, I'm interested to hear your takes on Eli Ricks here. Anthony Richardson at 19, and then JSN going to the Seattle Seahawks at 20.
Yeah, so I would have no arguments with 16 and 17. I mean, Gonzalez, Harrison are two guys who are just really good players. And Anton Harrison, again, we talk about it. He probably deserves more consideration for being in that, like, right up there with the top three. I feel like people separate him out a little bit. I think his tape was probably better than Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones, I think, in terms of the ceiling may not be quite as high, but he played better football and he's strong as Knox. So Eli Ricks, though, I don't know how you even evaluate him. He played like 3 snaps, it felt like, at Alabama, which makes no sense because it's not like their secondary was dripping with guys who were playing really good. Like they were giving up a lot of yards, especially with their corners. And
those yards stopped when the problem was with that Alabama team is Eli Ricks didn't play the first 6 games of the season. And then when Eli Ricks comes on the field, like that secondary is meaningfully better. So in my opinion, for the Detroit Lions, you got to do your diligence here and like figure out what was the issue. Obviously, he transfers from LSU. He violates team rules, takes a suspension, I believe, in the spring. A former 5-star guy who's dripping with talent really reminds me of Joey Porter Jr., but I think he's a little bit smoother than Joey Porter Jr. And Eli Ricks was kind of farther down on my board until I really got into the film, but 224 coverage snaps. He only allowed 6 receptions on 19 targets for only 77 yards. Like he was a walking seatbelt for them when he started to play. get it. The sample size is not as big as you want, but he's been good for 3 years, even going back to his time at LSU. And I think he's got a super high ceiling. And again, if the Lions figure out what's the deal with them and make sure the character concerns are all checked away, I think Eli Ricks is going to be in discussion for a first-round cornerback. This cornerback class is absolutely loaded. We're going to have a lot of cornerbacks that we're discussing in these first 2 rounds. And then Anthony Richardson for the Bucs, I think that just makes a lot of sense.
Everybody's doing that. I don't know. I still think I don't know. It'll be tough to pick him in the first round for me. Just the consistency. So
100%. He's we say he's the definition of a lottery ticket. Like if he hits, he's going to hit and be a very, very good quarterback. But again, you have a lot of concerns with him. I could see if Lamar Jackson gets traded or does not return to the Ravens, I could see Anthony Richardson being kind of a nice fit in Baltimore as well, because he is as close as it gets to being an elite runner of the football like Lamar Jackson is. Forfeited pick for the Dolphins at 20, 21 Jordan Addison, 22 Bijan Robinson coming off the board to the Ravens, Joey Porter Jr. going to the Minnesota Vikings, Darnell Washington going to the Jags, and Zay Flowers going to the Giants.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Jordan Addison versus JSN is going to be a really tight kind of race for me for wide receiver too. I think I mean, that's really splitting hairs. They both have a game where it's they're ultra solid, they're good at everything, but maybe they don't have all pro ceiling type game. That's kind of how I see them. Both not giant guys, both not.
But see, we've been all saying that with guys like Justin Jefferson coming out of school at LSU. Where are the all pros going? Pick the elite route runners, the guys who are just really good at the position. A lot of similarities between Justin Jefferson coming out of LSU and Jordan Addison. I think Justin Jefferson went 22 to the Vikings, so similar range, but both guys who have elite movement skills, elite route running ability, and you could throw JSN in there too. I think the one difference is Jordan Addison can more play on the boundary versus JSN might be a little bit more pigeonholed to that slot.
Yeah, I don't know. I still am not 100% sure with that on JSN. I think he did play a lot of slot when Garrett Wilson and Olave were on the field, but then you did see him kick out and play everywhere against Utah, and he torched them. So
he would have been really nice to watch a full season of this year.
Oh, 100%. That's what makes it hard. I mean, Addison, again, you saw now 2 straight years of just playing really good and being open constantly and catching every ball that comes his way. So Bijan, I mean, he's by so far and away the best running back in this class.
Oh,
and the Ravens, you're kind of right. They haven't had a guy who they can rely on particularly well for the last few years. I mean,
J.K. Dobbins was my guy. And if you guys I love J.K. Dobbins coming out of Ohio State, but it's really hard to see how he was running the football with that knee. And I'm no doctor, but that knee was not 100%, and it's been a very long time. And especially with running backs with those knee injuries, he just doesn't have the juice that he used to have. You know who has a ton of juice? Bijan Robinson, who also he's elite at everything you're going to want a running back to do. Very good pass catcher as well. He's very good in pass protection. For a team that loves to run the ball, I love the idea of Bijan Robinson getting 25 touches behind that Baltimore Ravens offensive line.
Yeah, and especially with Dobbins coming up on his contract, it's probably time. I'd be really kind of surprised at this point if they go with him as the future guy. And the Ravens, they need a running back to be really good. And
Joey Porter Jr. pretty chalky. But what's your take on Darnell Washington here?
That's it. He's such a tough one for me. There's part of me that wonders, can he get any separation in the pros? He really is. For his size, he's a good route runner, but if you're just talking pure tight end, I'm not sure he's just so big. You look at him, he's kind of a lumber. I don't know. In college, he was just too big for a lot of guys. He does catch the ball well for his size, and obviously he blocks, but
I think so many people are focused on Darnell Washington as he's not as good of a pass catcher as a guy like Luke Musgrave or Dalton Kincaid or even Michael Mayer. But what Darnell Washington is going to do for a team, especially like the Jags who can move the football, is there's 2 things that are really, really important for NFL teams. And the number one thing is scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Darnell Washington is going to be coming in and being immediately one of the more productive red zone targets. But he also, whatever team he goes to, you're going to be able to run the football so effectively. I don't know if you're bringing Evan Ingram back, but he's not really a blocking tight end. You're getting a 6th offensive lineman who provides tremendous upside in the red zone. I get it. Darnell Washington as a complete tight end, probably not as good as some guys like Luke Musgrave and Dalton Kincaid, but what he can do and the value he can provide to a team, I think is worth a first-round pick here.
But like that, even when you say red zone ability, like you just because he's big, like you still need people to move and be a bit of a fluent route runner. I'm not sure that he is that route runner to take him to that high in the first round, especially when you do have good tight ends. Like you saw Musgrave really pop at the Senior Bowl.
He was awesome.
Michael Mayer, I feel like people are getting a little tired of him, but he's still incredibly good. Like you watch what he did against USC. He makes contested catches. He gets open. He can get himself open with routes. I don't know. I'm not so high on Darnell as you. I think it's going to be interesting to see because I'm not sure he's going to be able to get open on guy. And I get he's big but
he's more of a guy that when he's covered, he's open. Like because the pass catching chops came together the last 2 years, especially last year. He caught for almost 500 yards, and so a lot of the concerns was like, can he catch the ball? Like his first 2 years at Georgia, 166 yards, 154 yards, wasn't really active in the pass catching game. And I think you also were sitting behind the best tight end in the country with Brock Bowers. Darnell Washington on a team where he was tight end 1, I think would have been a lot more productive in the pass catching game than most people give him credit for. Dallas Cowboys at 26 go get Emmanuel Forbes, a guy that is rocketing up boards. We liked him early on in the process. Then Daniel Jeremiah releases his top 50. As I think Emmanuel Forbes like 21 in his top 50. Antonio Johnson going to the Buffalo Bills. Michael Mayer to the Bengals at 28, which I love that fit. Felix Anudike-Uzomah going to the Saints. And Will McDonald going to the Chiefs. And then finally Osiris Torrance rounding out this first round going to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Forbes is a guy, when you were watching Martin Emerson last year, I feel like you almost started like, whoa, who's that other guy on the other side of him? That guy's awesome. And in that, again, you've just seen it, like that big, long, can move and shadow route runners even with that size. Antonio Johnson is a guy I feel like he's going to be a playmaker in the NFL. I think you saw him get moved around a fair amount. I feel like he's more he does a better job putting his nose in there in the box than some of the safeties in this class. Yeah. I wish he would tackle a little better. Like he did miss some tackles, which you'd like to see him not do in the pros.
He just flies around with his head cut off sometimes.
yeah, that's why I feel like it's like a fixable issue. And obviously the Bills getting up there in age at safety, and you just kind of need some playmakers in the secondary in general. Like they weren't taking the ball away a whole lot and making plays. So the guy obviously I want to talk about is Felix Anudike-Uzomah because I don't think he's going to be here. The disrespect he gets in terms of his ability he's got the full game right now. And I feel like people like talk about him like he's like some terrible athlete, but
yeah,
I don't know. He's like, for the size he is, he's a fairly flexible guy. And I don't feel like you see that with the other guys as much outside of Myles Murphy and Will Anderson. Hence, that's why I think like he's got more potential than I feel like some of these player or teams or draft analysts are saying. And he's playing better football than Tyree Wilson, in my opinion, right now for the last 2 years.
Will McDonald, a Senior Bowl riser. And he's a guy that I'm a little concerned in the run game. Like, again, he's a smaller edge guy, but the amount of pressure he was producing at Iowa State in that 3-3-5 defense where he's like lining up head over tackles and still winning, he's truly a special pass rusher. And teams want to get after the quarterback, especially in those third and long situations. You go get Will McDonald, too. I mean, you knew he was going to thrive in the Senior Bowl practices. When it was those one-on-one working against tackles, he's got long arms. He's got a full tool bag of pass rush moves. I really like his game. Osiris Torrance, this is more the Eagles just kind of eating their vegetables here. Like, he's just a really, really solid player that can play guard. They've worked him out at tackle. I don't think he's going to be a tackle at the next level. But again, you're getting a really good player at 31. The Eagles have the privilege of just drafting good players. And this is one of those players that he's really going to be good in the NFL. I
think I've decided I have Voorhees as guard 1. Andrew Rowe from USC is so good.
Yeah, I worked him in the second round.
In terms of his movement skills and what he can do, I feel like He's got potential to be a really good guard.
Osiris Torrance is a little capped with, and this makes me almost rethink that pick because the Eagles like to pull their guards and like to be like the Jason Kelsey's. Why he works so well in Philly because they ask him to do a lot of things in terms of moving around. And Osiris Torrance isn't going to be a guy that you necessarily want to be pulling around and be playing out in space because he ain't that kind of guy. 32, starting the second round, we got Trenton Simpson coming off the board as linebacker 1 to the Steelers. Josh Downs to the Houston Texans. They go quarterback, wide receiver. Feed me that. John Michael Schmitz, who is a Senior Bowl riser, going to the Cardinals. Matthew Bergeron, another Senior Bowl guy, and then Kalijah Cansey going to the Rams, takes on these picks here.
So I want to the Trenton Simpson, Josh Downs. Those feel like pretty make sense for where they are. Josh Downs is probably a late first to an early second. Same with Trenton. 2 I want to talk about are Schmitz and Bergeron because Bergeron's a guy who I think if he plays at a bigger school gets much more love. In terms of, as a pure athlete at the tackle spot, he's probably the best in this draft because he really moves well. I will say I don't think he's quite as strong as like Broderick Jones and Paris Johnson, which in that he's like quite a bit less strong, it feels like, and then that'll be something he needs to develop in the pros is to put some weight on the frame and be a little stronger. But in terms of pure movement, he's as good as anyone. And I thought he played a really good year. Even against Clemson, he showed that he can compete with the big dogs. So I'm a big fan of him. And John Michael Schmitz, a guy who I was watching him. I was doing like the interior guys over this week. Like him and Voorhees are guys who I feel like I should be thinking more about. And both of them, I think, are going to be really good in his own scheme, especially John Michael Schmitz. And that's how Minnesota is running it. And he's a great athlete. I feel he can get a little power behind him. He doesn't get moved around. So he's a guy I think play guard or center, which is nice. I think he's going to be a really good fit in the NFL.
He's Jason Kelsey, and why I was so happy with the Cam Jurgens pick for the Eagles last year is like he's going to come in and be that Jason Kelsey next year when Jason Kelsey is moving on with his life. John Michael Schmitz is a very similar vibe center, very, very almost like Creed Humphrey. And you look at all the best centers, like that's the centers that are working on the NFL. I think John Michael Schmitz is the guy that's going to come in year 1. He's a veteran at Minnesota and be a solid center. These are the next few picks. I'm interested to hear your take on it. The Rams go get Kalijah Cansey, Adetomiwa Adebawore. I practiced his name and I definitely messed it up. A massive Senior Bowl riser, Tank Dell, another Senior Bowl guy, and Luke Musgrave. Kalijah Cansey and Adebawore from Northwestern. 2 guys that you're not necessarily sure what they're going to look like at the NFL. 2 undersized, under 6'2". I believe Adebawore is actually only 6 feet tall, but like the film's great. And then Adebawore, a guy that was able to play outside of that Northwestern think that Northwestern system kind of didn't let him use his full potential. He goes to Senior Bowl and absolutely dominates. 34-inch arms for 6'1" level dude. Like that's screaming to me Aaron Donald. And he's not the athlete Aaron Donald is, but I think he is going to test very well. Takes on here.
So Adebawore is a guy I got to watch a little more. Of course, I saw the Senior Bowl tapes or clips where he was running through guys and making plays. And I think take that for what it is. Like those one-on-ones are obviously they're not real football. So it's like some guys are those one-on-one heroes and then they stink in the actual game. The one I want to talk more about is Kalijah Cansey because my worry with him is I think he had enough power in college to at least threaten guys and then use it to let his athleticism shine through, which is typically how he is winning. But I'm not sure against like the top end guys in college and hence the NFL players that he has the power to even challenge an interior offensive lineman. If he can't challenge him, the athleticism is just not going to be worth as much. So he's a guy just the size and the natural cap I kind of struggle with.
Reminds me of a very similar take we used to hear with another undersized interior defensive lineman from Pitt.
Donald have like 59-foot arms. Like and also you always talk about this too. Like Aaron Donald's a guy who he's a unicorn. You just like there's a reason he didn't go number 1 in the NFL. I mean, in college he was doing the same things he's doing now, which is people are like, well, typically it doesn't work out when you're that much below 300 pounds and you're that short and so forth. And I don't know, you watch Kalijah Cansey, like, yes, he's productive, but he he doesn't have threatening power like Aaron Donald does, in my opinion. And then I just don't see what he's going to win with, because I don't think you can be only an athlete in the interior. And
The
he's not.
thing is, if he can translate what he did at Pitt to the NFL, like he has the second best interior defensive line film in this class. Like his film compared to Brian Brazier's this year is eons better. I mean, he was dominating guys, 22.7 pass rush win rate, like an elite pass rusher from the inside.
But do you think he can blow through an NFL guard? Like,
no, but I do think his quick twitch and his ability to use his hands will translate. And I just
you need to have the threat of running through a guy, or else you're just gonna like put his head down.
You're the guy who always says trust the film, trust what the player you see in college.
What I'm saying is, I don't think on the film you saw enough power for him to be able to utilize his athleticism. That's what I'm saying.
He's going to be an interesting one. He's going to – I can't wait to see where he goes. I think Daniel Jeremiah had him going top 10, so it's like a lot of varying opinions on him. And then let's go. Raiders get tanked out. Luke Musgrave going to the Bears, which I absolutely love. Takes on those two picks before we get to Keely Ringo.
No, Tank Dell is going to be a guy. I mean, I think he's going to work. He's a little small, whatever, but he's such a good route runner. I think he'll work. And Musgrave's a guy, again, you didn't get to see a ton play this year in college, but one of those tight ends who just looks like they run a little better than everyone else. And when you're that big and you can run like that, you can be a weapon.
And Luke Musgrave was a big riser for a couple of reasons. One, what you saw in 2022 before he gets hurt, I mean, like both games before he gets hurt, 5 catches plus 80 yards. And then he comes to the Senior Bowl, is very, very athletic. He looks great. He's obviously recovered from the knee injury, but he's also like, I did not give him enough credit for being solid on the line of scrimmage. He looked very good in run blocking in the Senior Bowl game as well. So he's a guy that was a big-time riser. That was one of the big question marks, is he can dominate the middle of the field. And what the Bears want to do, they want to run the football. And you're probably going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. Him and Cole Kmet giving – it's kind of a more unique way to get Justin Fields weapons. Like, we weren't able to get him a wide receiver, especially with trading down all the way down. But you're going to have Cole Kmet, Luke Musgrave, 2 really, really good tight ends that you can work with running the football and then go get them the football in space. It's a unique way of getting Justin Fields his weapons, but I think it could be an effective way. Next 5 picks, Keely Ringo going to the Saints, a guy that I'm interested to hear your takes on. Keon White, another Senior Bowl riser, going to the Titans. Jack Campbell, your favorite, going to the Browns. Carl Brooks going to the Jets. Jalen Hyatt going to the Falcons. And then DeJuan Jones going to the Green Bay Packers. Takes on these picks here.
I mean, Keely Ringo's a guy I think everyone kind of knows, like, in a certain system, he could be really good. I don't suspect you'll want him playing a ton of man coverage. Just when you watch him, he's not the stickiest player.
No.
But he's big, he's physical, and he's got good range for sure in space. So in a zone scheme where he can play like a Richard Sherman role, I think he'd be really good. Keon White's a guy I'm not 100% sure. I've watched probably not enough yet of him, but the times I haven't seen him pop off the screen to me. So again, I am a little skeptical of guys who make their hay at the Senior Bowl when you didn't necessarily see a ton of dominance on the field. So I don't know. What are you seeing in him that gives you number 41 pick? Because that's pretty high.
I see a very good player off the line of scrimmage who's really big, like 286 pounds. He had 30 pass rush hurries. He's a very good pass rusher who's good against the run. But you're kind of betting on the traits a little bit. Like 6'5", 286 with his get off. Like I get it. He wasn't popping out at Georgia Tech, but I think that's a really hard defense to pop out at. And then you go down to the Senior Bowl, and he looks like an athlete that can succeed at the NFL level.
Yeah, no, and again, that's fair. You just said, like, I don't know that I saw that on the tape, but
fair.
Yeah,
he was the guy that I had going in the first 2 rounds, and I almost kind of worked him in because he had a good Senior Bowl. Wanted to talk about him a little bit.
That's suspect, but Jack Campbell's a guy I think probably could be linebacker 1.
The best linebacker film in the class.
He's getting bad. I think he's gonna move better at the combine and all that. I mean, he's gonna test okay. I mean, a big, taller guy, but at the end of the day, he played the best linebacker in college.
Oh yeah,
I don't think it was close. So. Carl Brooks, another guy. I think now this is a guy who, yes, the Senior Bowl helped him, but then this morning I go back and kind of watch what he was doing in college, and he's really good. I think you could maybe take him up a little higher because he's a guy who I think's got the size to have threatening power in college, but he's also got really good hands and he's pretty flexible for being that big. So I think he's a guy you can move right across the line, play anywhere, and be disruptive. And that doesn't hurt now when these NFL teams they're not playing the same base defense. Like they want guys
Yes.
to move across and play everywhere, do twists, do
And
other.
Rob Saleh's going to have a field day with him, like running those stunts,
Yeah.
because that's what he really thrived in the game. And he played like wide 9 at certain points at Bowling Green, and they played him on the edge because he was the best player on Bowling Green's defense by far. So they wanted to put him in a position where he could impact the game. He's obviously probably going to play more of that 3-tech interior defensive line spot in the NFL. But I mean, he was a guy that needed to win the Senior Bowl. He was the highest graded defensive lineman in the whole entire country, according to PFF. And he looked good, and he looked like he could hold up on the inside. But you said it best. The amount of different things you can do with a guy like Carl Brooks, I think, puts him in the top 50.
And he's not a pure traits guy. Like you watch who he's winning. Like he's got nice moves with his hands. It feels to me like he knows how to rush the passer. He has a plan. He does it right. He's not just winning because he's more powerful or quicker or whatever. Hence, like I almost think he could work his way up right around the end of the first round.
My only concern with him, and I think the Senior Bowl helped a little bit, was the 2 worst games you saw in film was UCLA and Mississippi State when he jumped up and played that Power 5 level. When he was playing the MAC, he was dominating
That's
unblockable in the MAC. But the MAC is probably one of the worst conferences.
Like I watched him against Toledo. He was in the backfield every play.
They couldn't like Central Michigan too. If you watch that, or Akron, he legitimately was never blocked. He was just winning consistently. So he's a really interesting prospect to take a look at. Jalen Hyatt and DeJuan Jones. I know you like Jalen Hyatt, and I think that makes a lot of sense. They'll rip me apart with DeJuan Jones, though.
DeJuan Jones, and I don't know, maybe I'm like when I go back and watch him in college, he actually had a really good year this year. I felt like guys weren't getting a whole lot of pressure on him. He kind of had a sort of what I'd call a dominant year, but when you look at how he's winning and how he plays the position, there's I just don't see how you can be crossing your feet on a pass set. And if you get a guy like a Von Miller, a Nick Bosa who can convert speed to power, and you have your feet crossed, they're going to blow right through you. And if that's how he needs to get himself back in his pass set, I don't see how that works against a really top tier pass rusher who knows what he's doing. And
I have a question. Do you think he can play guard in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he might be able to play tackle. Okay, I'm saying all this about how he plays, but God, he's played in the Big Ten and he played Georgia and everyone else, and whatever he was doing worked. I mean, he wasn't giving up a ton of pressure. He was solid in the run game. He's a guy I'm not even sure I'm totally made up my mind on, because it's I don't get how it's working, but it's working, and I don't think it's a Daniel Falele situation.
No, much more explosive.
Way better football. He's got something to him. I don't know. It looks like he should be able to be a better tech. He should be able to have better technique, because I feel like he's got the athleticism to do it. He's a tough one for me. I don't know.
I mean, 36-inch arms. I think he's explosive off Daniel. The difference between him and Daniel Falele, but they have both had massive size, massive hands, massive length. Daniel Falele could not get out of the stance. He would just eat people up with his size. DeJuan Jones shows some chops of being a good athlete. I mean, you have a guy who is plus athleticism at 6'8", 375 pounds with 36-inch arms. I think there's some serious chops for him to work out in the NFL. Now, Darnell Wright, I know you like him going to the Patriots. Andrew Vort, he's finally coming off the board to the Commanders. Noah Sewell, that was just the Lions need a linebacker, and Noah Sewell's film was not good in 2022. But let's go let him play.
Noah Sewell is nasty, so it's tough.
Yeah, Cam Smith's a guy we can talk a little bit about. Not as high on him as others. Going to the Steelers at 49, and then Cody Mock going to the Bucks at 50.
So yeah, I don't need to talk much about Darnell White and Voorhees, so we already talked on Voorhees, but Darnell Wright, I feel like, has a very similar style to Anton Harrison. Just a really strong tackle, not a great athlete, but a good athlete. But when you're that strong, I feel like you can cover for yourself a little bit. And then Noah Sewell's a guy you got to make more tackles than he did. And you see the pops of like, man, this guy should be really good. You see him flying around, but for some reason, there's just not a whole lot of productivity, especially not this year. But a guy, it feels like if you believe in your linebackers coach, you probably should get a really good player. Because as a freshman, we all thought like, man, dude, this guy is. And I don't know. There could be part of it because he was Penne's brother, and Penne was obviously those were the years he was like the man, and everyone was talking about him. So I'm sure that didn't hurt. But you did see the flashes of ability. So he's a guy who I feel like maybe deserves that later on second, even though the production and like maybe the tape was closer to like a fourth round.
Cam Smith, the guy that I just don't think the cornerbacks. I just like so many, and I don't think Cam Smith's a bad cornerback. I think he's a little too handsy, but the more reason he's moving down my board is I just think there's a lot of cornerbacks who are better than Cam Smith and have a higher. Like I don't think Cam Smith's going to test nearly as well. You see some J.C. Horn comps. Like he's not nearly the athlete that J.C. Horn is. I have a lot of questions about Cam Smith, and to be honest, like Tyreek Stevenson had a great Senior Bowl. Jalen Jones had a great senior. Jalen Jones is a freak athlete. I shouldn't say he had a good Senior Bowl. And then even like a guy like Clark Phillips or Garrett Williams from Syracuse, I think all have strong arguments to go over Cam Smith. So I'm a little confused about him.
His hands on the ball, though. That's the one difference. Is he'll take the ball away. He'll make some plays. Like, yes, he'll give up a little bit in coverage, but he'll make the game-changing plays. A little bit like a Trayvon Diggs kind of. Not saying he is him, but like that type of game where he'll
high risk, high reward.
Ball away.
Yeah. Cody Mock is he's going to play guard. I just don't think he's a tackle at the next level, 32-inch arms. I don't think he has the athleticism. I think he's going to be a very good interior offensive lineman. Bucks kind of just eating their vegetables with a guy that's probably going to be a very solid guard at the next level. Geno Smith is the future, but I think you go and take a shot at Hendon Hooker here. Or Geno Smith is the present. Like he's going to be the starting quarterback in 2023. Hendon Hooker, like I know you love him, but sits a year coming off the ACL. And then I think he's going to be ready to go. The one question I have is Pete Carroll going to waste a 51st overall pick on a more of a future piece when he wants to win a Super Bowl now? It's probably one question, but I do think that makes a lot of sense in terms of a roster building move. Tyreek Stevenson had a phenomenal Senior Bowl. And those one-on-ones, like people can't get off the line of scrimmage on him. He's very long, he's very physical, and he uses his body extremely well. Jalen Jones, another guy that a really, really good athlete at that cornerback spot. Obviously, the NFL values that. Drew Sanders going to the Bears. Any big time takes on those picks there?
Not particularly. I need to watch more Tyreek Stevenson. I'll say that. And Jalen Jones is a guy I think probably is going to go higher than this when it comes down to it because that big, that athletic, and play the run game as well as any corner in this draft. I think he'll have an argument for the early portion of the second round, not so late, but.
Drew Sanders going 54 to the Bears. Siaki Ika going 55 to the Lions. A.T. Perry going to the Jags at 56. Deion Henley going from Washington State going to the Giants at 57. And then Keanu Benton from Wisconsin going to the Cowboys at 58.
I'm coming back around on Siaki Ika. I was like, oh, man. I thought he was so good last year. I feel like the tape wasn't quite as good this year. But then I kind of was like, I was watching another couple of games, and you still see that gigantic. You can't double team him and move him. He doesn't move off the line of scrimmage, which is certainly an asset and keep your linebackers free. But there still is like for being that big, he's a pretty good athlete and he makes tackles. Like that's the difference between him and some of these other giant D tackles we've had in the past. Is he's a more productive. He can shed a block and make a play in the hole. I'm coming back around. I think he's going to be a force. Like he pushes the pocket. He just plays a really good game. I think back up to early second for me.
Well, I don't know about that because the 2022 film was so. And you said he takes on double teams well, but there were times where he's getting blown off the football, and I'm like, how can you be like 6'4", 355 pounds and get moved around so much?
Tired. He was playing a lot and the fast paced in college. That's
true. That's a good argument.
His game isn't really built for the college game, similar to like maybe how Jordan Davis was. Like Jordan Davis would get tired and when the teams are playing 50 snaps a second, the big dogs get tired. But like then the NFL, obviously it's a slower game and Jordan Davis looked really, really good. I think Siaki Ika is going to work. A.T. Perry's a guy who should have been at the Senior Bowl. That's such a like I don't know what they watch. I'm not I
Go
think the
on.
Senior Bowl, what they like to do is take these guys from small schools and build them up to be like the best player. Oh, look at what all these stupid college coaches miss, not us. Like that's what they like to do. And then you got a guy like A.T. Perry who's catching easily 1,000 yards every season. He's been like a starter.
30 touchdowns in the last 2 years.
It's a
Like this guy
dominant
is
player, and you don't have him at the Senior Bowl. Like we saw some wideouts at the Senior Bowl who aren't even in this guy's league. So I don't even like. There's things about the Senior Bowl I just think are like suspect, and that maybe is kind of one, but he's gonna be really good.
He's so smooth and he works the field vertically so well. And I think the Jags could use a bigger wide receiver who can kind of make plays down the field vertically and score touchdowns. And that is A.T. Perry. Now you add Darnell Washington and A.T. Perry. You're going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. Diane Henley, the Giants need a backer. They like bigger linebackers, but Henley, 34-inch arms, 230 pounds. He's maybe a little undersized for a backer, but does not play undersized. Like he is a very physical linebacker who can go sideline to sideline. You look at a guy like Jalen Smith who just can't make that happen. And so I think Diane Henley's a dude that he can do everything you want in a linebacker at the next level. Keanu Benton, a massive Senior Bowl riser. I got into his film a little bit. He's very good in the run game, but holy smokes, is he added to his pass rush. I think he's a guy who's probably going to be going in the round 2, maybe even earlier round 2. He's a guy that's a winner. Mozzie Smith, like he's inconsistent, but he is very good at getting off blocks. He can provide, he got some good bend, and you obviously know he's number 1 on Friedman's freak list, like a freak athlete. You didn't see it translate to the field as much as you'd want, but I still think you bet on the traits. Jamie Robinson from Florida State, he had a very good Senior Bowl. He's very good in man coverage, and so I think he can come and kind of play like inside the box and cover tight ends in man coverage. Jaden Reed, another Senior Bowl winner, and then rounding it out with the Chiefs, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce 2.0, getting him in the late second. Travis Kelce obviously getting up there in age, but showing no signs of slowing down. I think you go add another playmaking tight end for the Chiefs to round out that second round.
So yeah, just to get into this, Keanu Benton was a guy at Wisconsin. I felt like I judged this more of like a space eater, not really a producer. Like he didn't make a ton of tackles, didn't have a ton of sacks, didn't necessarily pop off as a playmaker. But then the Senior Bowl came and he looked like maybe he's got that in him, and he was playing at Wisconsin, where again, that what they want their nose guards to do is they don't necessarily want to make a ton of plays. They want them to keep linebackers free, and he did that. So he's a guy I kind of want to go back through and watch with more that eye, like, ooh, well, maybe he does have that ability in him because you saw it at the Senior Bowl. Mozzie Smith's a guy who just a really solid player. I don't think he's ever going to be like a great NFL player, but played really well at Michigan, and I think he'll be a dependable guy. The one I wanted to get into is Jamie Robinson. I think this is awfully high for him.
Ooh.
And I'm not sure he's the athlete that like you're kind of looking for at this pick. When you watch him play, it's yes, he makes some plays and he doesn't have like necessary problems, but I'm not sure he moves like and has the range that you want from your free safeties where some of these, and I just don't see anything that he does that's top or second round level.
I think that's interesting that you say that because I think he's a smooth mover, and I think the athleticism, like he doesn't pop off like an Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M, but I think he's a really smooth mover.
What like how fast do you think he's gonna run? I think he's gonna be like kind of alarmingly fast.
Well, that'll be something we have to monitor. I didn't think it was that big of a problem, and I thought he had a good Senior Bowl, and he was, I guess, more of a guy that I worked in because he looked really good in those drills. And so he's a guy that I think could move himself up. And then Jaden Reed's another guy that I think looked awesome at the Senior Bowl and a wide receiver that no one is really talking about because Peyton Thorne was throwing him the football.
He was punished for being at Michigan State. Like when he got his shots at Michigan State, he was awesome, but he just didn't get any because their offense was mostly running the year before. And then Peyton Thorne just kind of took a step back and just had a really struggled this year to get him the football.
And he's going to test well. Like Jaden Reed he looks way faster than I thought he was. And I think it's just hard to show that speed. And he's also got some serious chops in special teams. That'll do it for our 2-round NFL mock post Senior Bowl. Again, appreciate you guys checking us out. A lot of different prospects working their way into round 2. We'll be doing a lot more individual team mock drafts coming up. We appreciate the support you guys have shown. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.